Are you an author wondering about the differences between a sole proprietorship and an LLC? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this short video, so stick around. Hey, it's Joe Solari here from the Business of Writing and Indie Author Alchemy, where we work with authors on the business of writing. So what we're going to talk about is sole proprietorship and the limited liability company, but specifically we're going to get into not only what the differences are and get rid of a bunch of the myths that you may have heard, but we're going to talk about what's really important to you as an author, and that is when to do this and why. So if you watched any of my material, you understand that one of my biggest focuses for authors is understanding the working capital needs of your business. What does that fancy phrase mean? Well, it's about making sure that the cash that you have to put into your author career is going to the right places. Now, while I sell courses about how to organize your business and to set up LLCs, you'll understand that what I really want you to do is make sure that the cash that you have to put into your business goes to what is most important. And at the beginning stages of an author career, it's not about setting up a company. Where your money needs to go is in the basics of all small business. We need to figure out if you have a product that the market is prepared to buy. Now, I'm not talking about writing to market. What I'm talking about is understanding your audience that you're writing to. Because unless this is just a book that you have to write and you're going to do one and done, then you really need to establish an audience that reads your books and will come back for more. If that doesn't happen, then you're never going to be able to make a living as an author. But the great thing about today is that finding that audience, connecting with that audience is easier than ever. And because of the democratization of content creation, you're able to find your niche. I am amazed by the niches that people are writing into and making lots and lots of money. So if you can write a decent book and you can find your audience, you can make a living writing. So one of the things that comes up a lot with authors early in their career, when they're starting to do their research and figuring out the best way of getting into the business, right? So there's probably that first layer of, should I traditionally publish or should I independently publish? Well, if you know from this channel, we spend a lot of time focusing on how to drive this from an independent publishing perspective. My belief is that the energy that you have to put in on a daily basis to make this business work is far more productive to put into finding your audience, connecting with that audience, and giving them a great product versus hoping to connect through a series of, for lack of a better term, gatekeepers, getting them to see that your product is what the market wants. The best place to find out what the market wants is in the market. So if you're at that early stage and you're wondering, well, if I'm going to self-publish, do I need to set up a company? Understand some things. The minute you start on your venture, you're what's considered a sole proprietor. Now, what does a sole proprietor mean? It's a designation by the IRS saying that you're earning income by the sole work that you do. Doesn't matter what that work is. Any income that comes in that way, they have in the tax code outlined how much you're supposed to pay in taxes. Now, as a sole proprietor, there are 2, possibly 3 taxes that you're going to have to consider. Number 1 is self-employment tax. This is essentially the Medicare and Social Security portion that you would pay and the employer would pay. You're now responsible for both, and that has to be paid. At this time, that's 15.3%. The second one is federal income tax. Based on what your net income is from your business, you will have to pay taxes on that at your nominal rate. So whatever you're paying currently because of your day job, that would be the rate you would pay. Third is, for those of you that are in a state that has a state income tax, you will also have to pay the appropriate state income taxes. Now, from a tax perspective, if you were to set up an LLC, it is treated the exact same way and can be dealt with on your personal income tax return in the same location, the Schedule C. So from the perspective of taxes, an LLC and a sole proprietorship are exactly the same. What is different? Well, a LLC, or a limited liability company, is a state-organized entity that protects your asset. So here's another thing to keep in mind. If you're early in your career and you don't have a lot of assets to protect, you don't necessarily need to set up an LLC. The other part of it is, remember, it's limited liability. There are certain liabilities that the company will not protect you from. So if you commit criminal activity, you're not going to be protected. What it does protect you from is if you have creditors, the assets of the business are what are liable if you don't pay your bills. So if you were to go bankrupt, your personal assets wouldn't be included. Now, that means that you can't mingle your assets. One of the single biggest things that most authors do wrong, and this is as a sole proprietor, even prior to setting up their LLC, is they commingle assets. So when is the right time to set up an LLC? This goes back to my philosophy of making sure your capital, and that's the cash that you're putting into your business as well as the time. Because remember, a lot of the capital that's going into your self-publishing business is your sweat equity. Those two components, to make sure that we're utilizing them the best as possible. So that means that when you're getting started, the main areas for you to be investing is your books, making sure that is the highest product quality possible. Invest in your covers, invest in your editing, make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to make that product, when it hits the market, hit the right people and get the response you want. Talking about setting up an LLC, the cost range from anywhere from $1,000 a year down to $50. Figuring on average, it's about $150 in most states to have an LLC set up. That's $150 that you can't put into a book cover. So in the beginning, focus on just being a sole proprietorship. And then when you get to an income level where you have the extra capital, then you can go and set up that company. Because the company will then be able to do the things that a company does, protect the assets. So when do you set up the LLC? After you get to the point where you have some books out in the marketplace, you're somewhere around $10,000 a year in income, and that's net income. Then you should think about getting your LLC put in place. Now, there are some caveats to that. If you are the kind of person that has a lot of assets already, if you're writing controversial works, then it might be a good idea to set up that LLC sooner rather than later. But for the bulk of the people that are trying to make it work in self-publishing, you have to make sure every dollar counts, and those dollars need to be in the product to begin with. So let's talk about what you can do, either as a sole proprietor or as an LLC, to make sure that you're paying the least amount you can and you're doing the right things in the beginning. The number one suggestion I have for you is set up a separate business account for your endeavor, even as a sole proprietor. Having a separate account where you can move the money in and out is going to make it a lot easier for you to see the record keeping of this business, even though it's going to end up being reported on your Schedule C, and it isn't a separate business in itself. Just having the account and the ability to go to those statements to see the information there, it'll be easier for you to get the cost right. The number one reason why most authors pay too much in taxes is because they don't track their expenses properly. In summary, number 1, focus on getting a good product to market first. Number 2, set up a separate business bank account. Number 3, operate as a sole proprietor until your business is profitable. A good rule of thumb is $10,000 in net profit. I hope you found this information helpful, and here are some next steps to help you on your journey as an author. Subscribe to this channel and keep getting great business tips for authors. Visit indieauthoralchemy.com to learn more about sole proprietorship and setting up a publishing company. On that website, I have a host of information, including a great cheat sheet that'll help you to know where you are on the author growth curve and what steps you should be taking to make sure that your business runs
as best as it can.
So if you like this video, please remember to subscribe and hit the notification bell.